Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you've logged in from. Thank you everyone for joining this much awaited panel discussion on quick commerce. We've had a phenomenal response to this session. And to be honest, ever since the pandemic struck and we have been doing a lot of virtual events, we've perhaps surpassed the number of registrations for this session. If I were to compare any of those sessions that we did in the past. So I'm as eager to get started as much as you are. So just to set the context, as the pandemic hit and the lifestyles and consumer behavior changed, the modern consumer journey has demanded speed and convenience. The sooner the customer has their purchase in their hands, the better. In fact, that's become the key differentiator. The arrival of quick commerce or Q-commerce, therefore, is something that should not come as much of a surprise. It is supposed to be the next generation of e-commerce or delivery. It's all about being fast, faster delivery of items that are unplanned and need quick delivery rather than just planned purchases with bigger cart sizes for a week or a month. Globally, it's become a huge opportunity. It's being recognized as a huge opportunity. In India specifically, quick commerce estimated at 0.3 billion in calendar year 2021 is expected to grow 10 to 15x in the next 5 years. To become something like a $5 billion opportunity by 2025. This is according to Redseer. So we've had a lot of players of late, players like Swiggy, Instamart, Dunzo, Zepto, Flipkart Quick, Ola Dash, which recently entered the market. Zomato, in fact, recently went on to say that it's ready to invest $400 million in this huge addressable market over the next 2 years. And it claims that its portfolio company, Blinkit, which was earlier called Grofers, is fueling the investment confidence. So today we invited Swiggy Instamart. They are the pioneers in quick commerce in India and a very, very valued customer of Vinculum to talk about this opportunity. So Swiggy actually in August 2020 is when Swiggy Instamart got launched. The company launched its instant grocery delivery service. And they used a network of dark stores and made a high impact entry in the convenience grocery category. It used its already established last mile delivery fleet. So the numbers that I have, which is maybe a couple of months back, but maybe a couple of months old, but Swiggy Instamart has been clocking somewhere around $1 million per week, 1 million orders per week a couple of months back. And I believe that they are way beyond that number now. So when Swiggy went live with Instamart, it became a huge rage. There were lots of memes that happened. And in their own words, they said, we changed the way India ordered food, and now we want to change the way India orders groceries. And sure they did. So today, without much ado, I would actually like to welcome our panelists for today. We have Nikhil Khurana and Karan Arora. Welcome, Nikhil. Welcome, Karan.
Thanks, Rachna, for having us.
Thank you, Rachna. Thank you, Vinculum team, for giving us the opportunity.
Thanks a lot for joining us. So just a quick introduction. Nikhil heads strategy and customer experience at Swiggy Instamart and has been with Swiggy since 2019, and he's worn several hats. Karan is the AVP and head of supply chain at Swiggy Instamart and has led and has held lead roles in supply chain in earlier organizations like MedLife and Snappy. So once again, thanks a lot for joining us. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you on the panel today. Just before we start talking to the panelists, some hygiene facts. We are holding this discussion for approximately 45 minutes, and we will open the door for questions in the last 15 minutes. So if you have questions during the show, please feel free to serve them, to put them into the chat window or under the Q&A section, and we will serve them on a first come, first serve basis. So let's get started. This is my first question, and this is to both Karan and Nikhil. Quick commerce is attracting new players, and the investors are not just in India but also globally. So how do you see this panning out in Swiggy? I recently read a media report wherein it's mentioned that Swiggy will be investing somewhere around $700 million in quick commerce. And Shadowfax, which is incidentally also a customer of ours, which provides warehousing and fulfillment services. They've also gone on record saying that they have seen a 500% surge in the year-on-year growth amongst orders on quick commerce platforms. But the speculation that's essentially on is that, when demand surge and when cases spike and local restrictions surface, that's when people demand quick commerce. But when normalcy hits and people will step out, this may not necessarily hold true. So what's your take, Nikhil, on this? And, where do you think maybe Karan or Nikhil, whoever would like to take the lead on this?
Right. Thanks, Rachna, for asking this question. So a part of the answer was already given by you when you started out the whole conversation, right? Swiggy Instamart announced that early in December or late November that we completed 1 million orders in a week.
Okay.
Now, at that point in time, we probably weren't during the peak of COVID, right? Those are the times where things are largely stabilized in some sense, right? The peak came in again around January in some sense. So that kind of answers the question. I think the demand is there. And if I think about the whole journey of Instamart so far, like from the time we launched in August of 2020, we've seen consistent growth. What tends to happen during COVID is, which is further beneficial to us in some sense, we are able to cater to the consumer needs even further, and we see demand spike on top of the normal growth trajectory by 30 to 40% further. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the demand is not already increasing over months in spite of even when COVID is not around. So we see a further bump, but that doesn't necessarily take away the fact that demand has been growing and we have been growing along with that. And being fortunate enough to be able to cater to the use cases of consumers over this past 1.5 years.
Okay.
So fortunately, unfortunately, yes, COVID did help us with the spike, right? But yes, I think like Nikhil said, I mean, we've been seeing consistent growth, right? It's basically, I think it's the stickiness of the model. What the consumers want, right? I think most of the needs are getting fulfilled instantaneously, right? I think that is what has actually differentiated this model, right? And obviously, I think it depends upon what is the CX or what is the consumer experience that you're providing to the consumer that they're again and again, right? So I think that is what we believe and we are very confident on the growth of this basically business model.
Okay.
Just to add to what Karan said, right? We think about Q-commerce as a very new business altogether. Let's look at the offline world, right? There are a lot of things which you need on an unplanned basis. Let's say somebody turns up at your home. So there are some guests. You might need to serve them snacks or beverages. Let's say you're craving something, ice creams and chocolates. You might want to make a run to the nearby Kirana store to grab some of those items, right?
Yeah.
So the whole idea of offline version of quick commerce already existed. You're just adding more convenience on top of it so that the customers don't have to step out. So that essentially means the market is there. To say that it's only because of COVID probably contradicts the whole system of Kirana stores and grocery players that we've had so far. Hence, I believe like the market is there. We have barely scratched the surface. I think there is a lot more distance to cover and the demand is infinite at this point in time. I don't see that we exhausting the demand or like the customer base anytime soon.
Yeah.
And so I guess you're right. Yeah. Please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, I think what Nikhil said, I think we also tried, or basically the other companies had also tried this like 4 or 5 years back as well. I mean, I remember in Snapdeal, we tried the same model with Pepper Tap and everything, right? But I think I personally think I think the internet penetration at that time probably we were way ahead of time, right? That time, but I think right now, I think people are getting used to basically coming onto this model, right? And that's what is basically fueling the growth.
So I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we've for time immemorial, we've essentially gone to the next door neighborhood Kirana shop. We just gave him a call and asked for a quick delivery of an item into our homes. I guess with this model, it's more a fact of your geographic coverage becomes much wider. It's not limited to one store. It could be perhaps multiple stores within a certain area. So that's I think one of the biggest I would say extension points of the e-commerce promise, right?
That's one, Rachna, and I think there's more to it, right? Depending on the area you are in, the reliability of service from the neighborhood stores could actually vary. There could be areas where your neighborhood store can do a phenomenal job where that person can deliver to you within 30 minutes after placing the order. It could be areas where like the order couldn't come in 1 hour because the person doesn't have enough people to deliver the order itself. So there is unreliability in terms of, let's say, the service quality. Then there is a part on the assortment, right? I think a lot depends on the catchment you are staying in, and the assortment is decided by that, the kind of demand that's coming from consumers. So the assortment also varies a lot by the catchment they are in. Plus, it's a restricted assortment that the Kirana stores also keep. I think on both fronts, the quick commerce can add a lot more value, where like they'll have a better understanding of the assortment that customer needs, could be wider, could be more relevant. And second, the reliability would be much higher. Like when you place an order and you need something, there'll be a surety. If we promise you 15 minutes, it will be delivered in 15 minutes. If we promise you 30 minutes, it'll be delivered in 30 minutes. We won't be playing a guessing game where the order can come anytime between 15 minutes to 1 hour. And like that would just uh, derail your plans altogether.
Got it. So maybe why don't you just do this? Why don't you just give me a quick understanding of how is Q-commerce completely different from e-commerce?
Sure. Let me take a crack at it, and I'm sure Karan would like to add to it. So think of e-commerce. I think you're fairly familiar with that concept, right? You can buy anything online.
Yeah.
It could be grocery, could be clothes, could be electronics. It applies to everything, right? You're selling online. I think the normal scenario we were used to was we'll get the orders the next day. Amazon introduced the next day delivery. It was a big deal for us, right? Because even before that, I think they were taking 2 to 3 days to deliver items at least. So next day delivery was a big thing. I think we have moved far ahead of that now. So e-commerce delivered within, let's say, 1 hour is essentially the Q-commerce world. Everything else remains the same. We can deliver you the same items, but it's done so fast and so efficiently that we're able to fulfill the order within the next 1 hour. And when I say 1 hour, I think that's like the upper limit of Q-commerce. I think people are doing it in 10 to 15 minutes, and it can range up to 1.5 hours as well. So that's how Q-commerce is essentially different from a customer value proposition perspective from the erstwhile e-commerce. I think that's the big change we've brought into the structure of the system. And of course, there is a lot of work that goes behind it to ensure that we are able to execute it successfully. And I'm sure Karan would like to add about it.
Yeah, so I think operationally, I would say it's quite different, right? Usually in an e-commerce, I think we're pretty far away from the customer. When I say far away, I mean, yes, we are probably a day or two away from the customer, but I think here there's a concept of something called as dark stores, Rachna, where we basically want to be as close to the consumer where basically the catchment or the heat map is, right? That we basically develop over a period of time, and we basically try to open the network as close as to the consumer as possible, so that I think all this basically the packing and probably the delivery on time, right? That becomes feasible for us, right? The second thing is I think it's not more about discoverability, right? I think the assortment in probably the dark stores or quick commerce would be a little bit more limited than what we basically get in a normal e-commerce, right? Because you certainly cannot keep everything when you basically close the consumer, and you have to basically open dark stores within the cities with the high rentals and everything. Right? So I think it's basically a function of the growth that you're getting, and also it's a function of the cost. So you have to basically keep a check on both.
Got it. So I think, one of the questions which I think most of us would be very, very interested to know about is you were already doing food, right? And so when you decided to move to quick commerce and started looking at delivering essentials, especially during the pandemic, we're very keen to know about how did you leverage the existing platform? And I'm sure there were some factors which were already working to your advantage, and you would have already got some things completely laid out for you, right? But what are the parts which you just leveraged? What are the parts that you had to build on or change the way, India orders groceries for you? So how did it go about? I mean, maybe you can just give us a little flavor of that.
Yeah. I'll probably break this into probably 3 parts, Rachna, right?
Sure.
One is basically the storefront, right? Which basically is the app or the platform or the Swiggy platform that you call, right? The second part would be on the warehousing and the dark stores, right, which is basically a part of supply chain, right?
Yeah.
And the third one would be probably the delivery aspect, right? Uh, so the delivery aspect, we already had that pretty much solved for us in Swiggy, Rachna, right? So we basically did offer to our partner restaurants the delivery services, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the storefront, I think there were changes that we had to basically bring in place because it had to look like a grocery store. It cannot just look like a restaurant, right? Right, what could be the different merchandising that needs to go in, right? What could be the different kind of campaigns, and what could be the different type of basically a perception that you give to the consumer? How would it be basically designed in a specific, how would the navigation be, right? So I think that is one tech aspect, or the basically tech stack that had to be developed specifically for basically the Instamart as a platform, right, wherein we basically onboard our vendors and suppliers for that, right? That's one part of it we defined. I think the major role that we basically played in the major differentiator, basically the major new things that we basically had to build from scratch was basically the supply chain, right?
Okay.
How basically the planning works, right? So basically we had to basically start forecasting, planning, so that we can help our partners basically plan the assortment, right?
Okay.
We had to basically give the right product assortment. We have to give the right product market fit to the consumer, right? So basically how we started with a limited assortment, right? Built upon basically what the consumer needed, right? What is the searches that we were getting, right? What are the demand that what are the products that the consumer needs? So how do we basically keep on adding the relevant assortment to our platform, right? How do we basically guide our basically sellers to basically keep those assortment, right? So that's the second part. The third part was basically about the warehousing services that we offer to our business partners, right? So that wasn't there in Swiggy, right? So we started building warehouses. We started basically using technologies inside the warehouses, right? So those are the things that we developed from the scratch, right? The other thing that we basically developed from the scratch was basically the tech services, the technology platform for the dark stores, right? Because it is very different from what we generally operate in a warehouse, right? Dark store is a mini warehouse, you can say, but the operationally, the tech system wise, I think it's pretty much different, right? At one place, you have sufficient time to pack in a warehouse, right? At a big warehouse or basically consolidation center, but in a dark store, you do not have basically much. You have to basically pick faster. You have to basically pack faster, and you have to basically keep it ready faster. So these were the tech things that we had to basically develop from the scratch. So we did, I mean, it was developed over a period of 9 months to 1 year, right? We did several things. We started with a different model of basically something called as Swiggy stores, right? So we basically started developing and basically started offering these services to our vendors partners, or basically the vendor stores, right? And that's how we basically built it over a period of time, Rachna, right? So I think these are the key things that we had to basically, these are still under continuous improvements, right? There are certain things that we picked from the market. There are certain things where we basically developed in-house products. So wherever we felt we needed more control, and wherever we felt we needed it would impact the CX much more, right? We basically wanted to keep in our control. So it was basically a mix and match of both, basically a make or buy decision, right? Which we basically, we also basically partnered with several players for the tech part, because we like we mentioned, right, the demand and the growth basically that we were overwhelmed to see the demand and the growth. So we had to basically catch up some speed to not lose this opportunity and sail through it.
Yeah.
So I think broadly these 3 points, right? One is the
Awesome.
storefront, the supply chain, and then basically the delivery. Yes, delivery, there are continuous improvements. There are certain things wherein we are basically tweaking in certain delivery factors according to what the requirements of quick commerce are, as separate to the food, right? I think how do we basically reduce the delivery time of, or how do we basically reduce the idle time of the rider here, right? So because in food, he has to travel from one restaurant to another restaurant. However, the dark stores are pretty much consolidated, right? So how do we basically
Yeah, right.
ensure that there are sufficient partners available for basically the Instamart stores as well as for the restaurant partners at the same time? We had to basically strike the balance. So these were the major differences, and basically we're still solving for it, right? It's not everything is perfect, but yes.
Okay, great. So, in fact, if you can just share some interesting trivia, in fact, I would be very interested to know this, and I'm sure even the audience would be, as to how did you hit upon this idea of moving into quick commerce? So, maybe Nikhil, you want to just touch upon this, any interesting trivia that you would like to share?
Sure, Rashna. So a lot of people think that we forayed into the quick commerce business with, let's say, Swiggy Instamart in August of 2020. But I think our foray into this whole grocery quick commerce segment happened around Feb of 2019 when we launched the Swiggy stores model. So essentially, it was largely the same thing where we worked in the marketplace model, where we onboarded essentially all your neighborhood supermarkets, kirana stores, and we used to deliver within 30 to 45 minutes from them. So think the food model where you have your favorite restaurants listed and you can place an order and we'll deliver from there. That's the model we had in Swiggy stores as well. All your favorite stores listed, you place an order and we'll deliver for them. And that's the business we launched in Gurgaon in February of 2019. And in that, you had kiranas, not just kirana stores and supermarkets, you had fresh fruits and vegetable stores, you had fresh meat stores, you had pharmacies, you had health supplement stores, and it just went beyond like the current thought process of grocery in some sense, right? Or get anything from anywhere within 30 to 45 minutes. So that's where we started our whole journey. And that's the business at least I joined. And later we realized that because of a lot of customer experience challenges, the marketplace model is probably not ideal to scale. But we realized the demand is huge. So we said, okay, fine, let's retain the value proposition of quick deliveries, but try to do it in a way so that we can cater to the customer needs far better than we are trying to do right now. And hence we pivoted into the whole Swiggy Instamart business. But the idea came in much earlier.
Phenomenal. So, in fact, that brings me to the next question, which is again top of everybody's mind, which is around several questions around profitability. In fact, so there are calculations that state that quick commerce has actually got the potential to be more profitable than traditional commerce, because the model in itself has several high cost advantages like cost of rental, parking, etc. Even marketing to some point, especially like brands like Swiggy, etc., very, very recognized brands, beyond a point, you don't really need to invest so much in marketing. So one point that keeps surfacing is the size of the shopping cart, because the whole model is, this is an unplanned purchase. I may just need one item. And in fact, I would like to make reference of one of co-founders of a founder of a fintech company who had actually posted on LinkedIn, where he spoke about the fact that, I feel really guilty getting my beard trimmer. I needed a beard trimmer, and I actually felt very guilty ordering from a quick commerce platform. And I was just thinking that I have used up the complete ecosystem in order to get that one piece delivered at my doorstep. So the size of the shopping cart, the delivery fees, the utilization of drivers, given that the beauty of the model is to enable the customer to actually get what he wants instantly and not make planned purchases, how do you control the profitability aspect of things? And, especially when there are multiple deliveries, maybe to the same location with single order purchase, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess you understand what I'm asking, right?
I do, Rashna, and that's a fair question. I think everybody has been asking that, not just right now, but for ages, right? Because people have experimented with the quick delivery model like 4-5 years earlier as well. And these are the reasons they claim what the reasons for the failure at that point in time. So one, I think I'll first start with the example in particular. These one item orders get a lot of spotlight, purely because people are fascinated by it, that companies are delivering one item orders to us at that speeds, and yet claim they can make a business out of it. So one, we are looking at a very small part of the spectrum. I think we need to look at it from a customer perspective, right? a customer has multiple needs. There'll be times when they'll need only one item because those are super urgent items. Could be milk in the morning, could be like a razor in case I want to shave and like get someplace really quickly. Uh, and there are times when you have a large basket to place as well. So what tends to happen when you start working with a new platform is you start engaging with the platform. At that point in time, you're trying to build trust with the platform. So yes, you can place 1 or 2 item orders to begin with, and it could be across categories, right? First time I place an order for a razor, second time could be for a milk, third time it could be a cooking essential because I was cooking something and realized that I don't have it. Over time, when the consumers get habituated to the platform and start liking the service, and they have realized that the assortment is also there for me to start placing the big orders, the same customer now transitions into placing the big orders as well. And then we have the whole set of customer orders together, not just the ones which are smaller, but also the big ones. And on an average, it starts to make sense. So I think that's the complete picture, and that's the long-term view as well. We tend to focus on the more controversial ones, the ones that gain the more spotlight. But over a long run, you see the customer basket, the bigger part of baskets also come into your platform, and on an average, it starts to make sense. Now, that's the short to medium term view. I think once customers start to appreciate the service and get habituated to the quick deliveries, I think it becomes very difficult for them, or they become very impatient to start waiting for the next day orders as such as well. The whole customer habits start to change, and that's what we started to see in some of our customer cohorts as well. At that point in time, you'll see the larger baskets also coming to your platform because customers don't have the patience to wait for the very next day. Even if they don't need it urgently, they still can't wait for the next day. Like, I think the answer has to be somewhere in between. So at an overall level, I think the basket size starts to make sense. And that's our point of view as well. So we're not so worried about it. While it's a fair question, I think it's not a problem that we need to bother ourselves with us too much.
And you're seeing that trend, you said, across.
Right. So I think what we see now, what we normally see is like when customers start to place orders, their baskets are relatively smaller, but over time, once they place 3 to 5 orders, the basket size gets larger and larger and larger, and it can increase to the tune of 30, 40% or even more.
Okay. Got it. So Karan, do you want to add something here, or maybe we can just go to the next question?
No, I think pretty well answered.
Okay, cool. So I think the next question is more around Vinculum, and you've been a very valued customer for us. And, how do you see this partnership panning out, and what are the areas, maybe you can just give some kind of a highlight in terms of the areas that you're essentially working with us on, and where do you see potential areas of growth for both of us?
Yeah. So Rachna, like I mentioned in the beginning, right, supply chain, I think building from scratch has been a key differentiator, or basically has been of key importance to what Swiggy had it in its own portfolio, right? So when we started expanding, right, this was last year, right? So we introduced Vinculum in our warehouses as a warehouse management system, right? And we've been using Vinculum, and now that we're present in around 21 cities, right? We've been using Vinculum in all our big warehouses that we have, right? So essentially we started with something like 1 or 2 warehouses, and now we're in 2021, right? And also the scale has drastically grown. I mean, you can say like our warehouses now are like probably 20 to 30x of what we started in the beginning. So it has a huge, it has more than a 1 million square feet footprint pan India, Rachna, and there's more to come, right? So actually Vinculum helped us scale, right, in all these places. It also basically helped us get the efficiencies in place, right? What's important here is, Rachna, I think, how basically our business team, right, and how basically the product teams of Vinculum work together. I think that's really commendable, right? I think both of them basically work with the perspective of a problem solving and solutioning, right? And both of them are like very customer first. Both of them go with a very customer first approach, right? I think I do not realize like whether it's in-house or whether it's basically a captive or whether I'm basically working with some other company, right? So I think we've been working very, very closely, and I'm pretty happy with the services that Vinculum has provided, right? Now, if you talk about growth, yes, there is obviously BAU growth that will keep on happening. However, we are also looking at exploring other key areas with Vinculum, which is essentially on basically on the ERP perspective, right? We are also basically working with Vinculum on exploring on the accounting perspective, right? And the third part basically that we're also working with Vinculum is on basically on the vendor perspective, right? So basically, how do we basically manage the vendors, right? Can we develop some technology? Can we develop some vendor portals, right? Wherein they can actually basically they get a fully automated view of what's happening with their business, right? So these are the things that we are working on and pretty excited about and pretty confident, rather, I would say, with the reciprocation that we get from the team and the commitments that we get from the team and the timely deliveries that they basically do for the project, right? I think
Thanks a lot, Karan, for being for those kind words. In fact, that's always our endeavor, to be able to work and partner with our customers rather than just be playing the role of a vendor. So very happy to hear that you feel the same, and look forward to
I think Vinculum is deeply involved in other projects. I mean, they would know what is actually happening, what is actually building inside Swiggy. So I think it's not just very limited to like, yes, we've given you this product, now you manage. It's not that type of thing, but it's a complete collaboration. Otherwise, it would not happen. See, what I'm trying to say is, being in e-commerce, being in quick commerce, right? I think you need continuous improvement in your operations because cost is an important factor, right? And most of these continuous improvements, right, in operations will come from tech, right? And if the tech teams are not working so collaboratively, I think this is not possible, right? So, but I think that is also basically Vinculum does understand the importance of this, right? And basically keep that in mind as well.
Sure. So thanks a lot for saying that. In fact, I'll just perhaps go back to, one of the points that, the earlier question which I'd asked Nikhil, and maybe you can just, Nikhil, also throw some light in terms of, you said that, people start with smaller ticket size and smaller basket size, cart size, and then they move on to, so there's enough data which is trending towards that direction. Also, would you like to just share some thoughts on what are the different types of categories? So I'm sure you started with essentials, right? And you did speak about the fact that you looked at the search volumes and then you started planning your inventory according to that. But over a period of time, we're sitting in February 2022. So, what are the kind of use cases that you see emerging? And also maybe some categories. So if you can just, yeah.
Absolutely. So I think I don't like using the word categories because it's inside out. I think use cases is the right way to look at it. So our job is to offer all the convenience use cases to the customers so that we can make their lives easier. And the definition is quite fluid. I think a lot of players, including us, are trying to still learn what convenience could actually mean to consumers. And very small examples could be, let's say we recently had the Valentine's Day and the Valentine's Week, and offering roses and Valentine's gifts to consumers played an important part in offering them convenience. So that's one of the topical ways of looking at convenience for the users, right? Similarly, I think 1 month back, we had the New Year's Eve. And during that time, a lot of us would like to party as such. So during that time, offering party games, mixers, ice cubes, all the topical use cases, we did that essentially to ensure that this event becomes even better for the consumers, right? So we take that lens in defining what are the things we want to offer to the customers, then taking an inside out view of saying, hey, these are the categories you want to offer. So that's the lens. That said, I think over time right now, people have started with the highest frequency use case of offering essentials. I think we have seen some green shoots of companies trying out other categories as well internationally. I read about Estee Lauder, the famous cosmetics brand. It partnered with Uber. It has partnered with Uber to deliver the items within 60 minutes. Deliveroo, a player in UK, has partnered with a high street retailer called Boots, I think. Again, a cosmetics player to deliver their items within 30 minutes. So I think keep seeing these offshoots happening. And it's still in the experimental stage. I think there's a lot to learn there, whether people actually need it within 30 minutes or not. Some of these use cases, which are not so urgent as such, they are unplanned, but how urgent they are, I think it's something which is still to be decided. So I think the category and the use cases will evolve over time. The work has already started, right? I quoted about 2 players in the cosmetics part. I think there's another player called Arrive in Germany, who's trying to offer electronics, let's say Apple products, Bose products, some of the home care and living products within 30 minutes to 1 hour. So I think these things, people will keep experimenting with these things. And over time, the ones which actually make sense to the consumers will stick around. So I think the journey has started. Let's see where we land with it.
I think it is very, very use case specific also, Rachna, right? I think just think of it. I mean, let's say if Apple launches its new iPhone, right? And if it gets delivered the day of delivery, I mean, gets delivered to you within half an hour, right? It would be a wow feeling for everybody, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's more about the use cases, right? Few things can be permanent, few things cannot be permanent.
In fact, it'll be very interesting to see the use cases panning out, as you said. So I remember speaking with somebody from Dunzo a year and a half back on use cases. And one of the things that emerged, which they never planned for, was people trying to get their stuff, picked up from their ex's place, kind of things. So those are things that they never planned about. And I guess these things just emerge, and apparently that became a very sought after use case for Danzos. This is at least just some trivia here. So that brings me to the next question, which is, I have let's say even a milk basket subscriber. So I subscribe to that service. And then you have something like a Swiggy Instamart, which is like quick service. And so how do you think, milk basket, which is a subscription based model, and whereas Swiggy, which is completely ECommerce based on an app, etc., etc. How do you think, is there some point of interjection that you see, going forward, or is this how it's going to essentially, maybe both will converge someday in terms of the subscription model to a quick commerce idea, things like that? What is your take on this?
Sure. Let me start by answering that, and then probably Karan can add. So I think all the offerings that you have, right, as a company, start with a customer and a problem that they have. And that's the core part of like defining what you should offer to the consumer. Is it a problem worth solving, right? So when you think about Milk Basket or the next day subscription services, right, I think the problem statement there was for planned users, they wanted to get something on an everyday basis, and hence subscription started to make sense for them, right? And when you think about the quick commerce business, I think the core TG essentially becomes someone who's unplanned largely, who doesn't like to plan, who's time pressed, working individual, who doesn't have time to like start thinking about the various things they need to get items cooked, etc. And hence quick commerce starts to make sense for them. I think that's where like both the services are important for the respective use cases and the TG, the target group that we're talking about, and can probably coexist together. I think that's my view on these two services. I think it'll be very difficult to say that one is better than the other. I don't think that, because I think every customer's use case is relevant and important, keeping in mind their behavior. So with respect to that, I think both the services will continue to grow and coexist.
And also, maybe to your point, it's a lot of habit forming. So once you get used to the whole idea that something can get delivered to me immediately, even my next day delivery is not necessarily as important, then I guess there has to be some level of convergence point that happens more out of habit than anything else.
Right. I think over time, these things will start to happen as we see, right? The whole idea of instant gratification applies to every service. It has happened in grocery, it has happened in cabs, where you now in a position where you don't want to wait for cabs for more than 5 minutes. Anytime that happens, you feel it's a bad experience altogether. And I can remind us, like there was a world like 10 years back when Uber and Ola weren't available. and we were okay with getting a cab within after 2 hours as well, because we knew we had to plan for it. Similarly for the airport trips, I think there were Meru available at that point in time. And we were quite okay with the Meru service because we believed, hey, we can plan for it and they'll turn up on time. That was our expectation. I think the expectations have changed largely. So I think similar things we'll also see in the grocery world. That said, I think for certain use cases like ordering milk every day, I think it has been happening for ages now, which can be put on automation. And that's where subscription services do a great job, right? You always know you need a milk packet every day in the morning. Could be once in 2 days, could be once every day, depending on your consumption. And you can automate that. And that's also convenience. So I think it will be largely dependent on the use case and the person you're talking to. But yes, at an overall level, I do agree with the phenomena that instant gratification will take over and planning will go away.
Yeah, I think both of them, like Nikhil mentioned, I think what I believe is, I think both of them might coexist, right? I literally don't know what would happen probably 2 years, 3 years down the line, right? But I think it's about what do you want to, or which is the target segment that you want to cater to, right? For Swiggy, we have Instamart and we do have Super Daily. So Super Daily is a subscription model right now, right? So
Okay.
that's basically done by Swiggy. So I think we have both of them. We see both of them as a different use cases. The other different thing is operationally, I think both of them are very different, right? The fulfillment of products in both the cases are very, very different. So I think it's difficult to merge both of them. It is, I'm not saying it's impossible to merge both of them. There would be something, but right now we're seeing it as two different things right now.
So I guess the consumers will decide this, right? It's all about their preferences.
Like always, that's always the case, Rachna.
I think you just nailed it by saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just wanted to do a quick time check. Do we have time for one more question, Sakshi, or should we open the floor for Q&As?
We do have time, Rachna.
Okay, great. So one question I have again, which is perhaps something which many people would like to, I think in parts you have already addressed, but maybe just from a pure point of consolidation and understanding, if you would just look at some top 3 challenges that any quick commerce players should be cognizant of, or should plan for, what would be the kind of things that you would like to point out? And I'll just open it to both of you. I mean, you can just pick up whoever wants to take the lead on this.
Got it. I think I'll order it. I'll probably answer it more from a supply chain perspective.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we see basically is how I basically see my supply chain is basically a fresh and a non-fresh supply chain, right? So fresh basically means all your fruits and vegetables, all your milk, all your basically your paneer, curd, etc. So these are the items which basically are very low on shelf life, right? So the biggest challenge is for fruits and vegetables, there is no big organized player in the market, right? Who can probably consolidate and probably help us with basically supplying, or basically help us with the supply of goods, right? So I think that is one market that we're playing in. We're basically building the demand, and we're also basically building some organized players over there, right? So that's one of the biggest challenge, because I think ensuring a consistent supply of these items is very, very important for the consumers who come to our platform, right? They see it as a very important category, and we need to be very, very diligent about it. We need to be very, very focused about it to building it in a right manner, right? And essentially, because it does not exist, we have to basically set the operations right. We have to basically set our predictions right. That's the one part. The second part, basically the second challenge is your demand for basically all the perishables need to be very, very accurate, right? Because it adds on to basically your wastages a lot, and wastages become a big part of your P&L, right? So this is something that we need to basically keep in control. So essentially, we would be looking into some more robust AIs or MLs, basically, which would help us in a more sophisticated forecasting, so that we can actually predict what's actually right to order basically improve on, right? And we are working on basically building. I think fruits and vegetables, I can surely say, I mean, we are probably by far the best in the quality in quick commerce, right? And we would like to basically further improve on from here. Rachna.
Nikhil, you want to add something?
No, I think Karan has largely covered it. I mean, those are the structural challenges that any grocery player will face, and we do as, I mean, given we are a Q-commerce player in the grocery space, we also face it. I think the only other thing that I think about is purely from an aspirational basis. It's not really a pain point as such, but we want to reach at that point in time, and that's the challenge we need to solve, which is move into a world where we make zero mistakes for the consumers, right? There should be no delayed deliveries, not even once. Right now, we are doing well, and I think a lot of customers will agree with that. But I think personally, from a Swiggy and Smart perspective, we want to move into a world where there are no mistakes from our side. I think whatever you order, you love the quality of items. The orders are never delayed, like not even a single mistake. I think that's the aspiration we have. I think I look at it as a challenge, and a challenge that I like to solve fairly quickly. So, but it's more of an aspirational problem than a pain point or a structural issue in the industry.
So I guess I see a lot of questions coming into the chat box. So maybe we should just open the floor for questions, Sakshi.
Sure, Rachna.
Yeah, so would you like to just read them out one by one?
Yes, Rachna. Thank you so much, Karan, Nikhil, and Rachna. So now the first question is, what should brands and retailers know about how to play and win with this model?
Okay.
Got it. So, Karan, why don't you start? Yes.
Yeah, probably I'll take the lead. I think one of the key areas I think where brands and retailers should know about is basically the growth that we're basically getting in this segment, right? Essentially, how brands and retailers, or basically how the brands and distributors, I would say, work in this segment is they basically have certain allocations for the modern trade and basically your e-commerce, right? So these are, I think if these projections are not baked in correctly, right, we lose out on certain opportunity, and at the same time, they lose out on certain opportunity. The second thing that they should basically should know about is, I think, we as a platform, Instamart as a platform, is giving a lot of small players access to a lot of bigger geographies, right? For example, there could be a lot of local assortment that we add, right? Probably that's restricted even to a local region, right? Probably in a city, and we would basically we basically help them expand into basically the bigger regions, or probably in the other geographies as well. For example, let's say D2C, probably there would be new D2C brands, right? For whom it would be very difficult to probably get into tier 2s. But I think these are the things we are helping them probably get into the tier 2 and all. So we're basically opening up the playground for them. We're opening up the horizons for them, right? So I think this is what they should also probably keep in mind and probably plan accordingly.
Thank you, Karan.
I'll add to what Karan said, right? I think when brands are looking at where to play, how to win with, let's say, quick commerce, they essentially need to start thinking like, what are the customer use cases that quick commerce is serving? These are all top-up unplanned needs, essentially, right? So what are the things that fit in really well into this? Some could be indulgences, cravings, fresh items, right? I think once you understand these things, you need to start planning accordingly, right? So let's say you are a player that works with the traditional e-commerce players or the modern trade players or the general trade players, right? You need to start understanding the change in consumer behavior and start working more aggressively on the new age trends that we're seeing with the quick commerce world. So that once you know that this is how the market is shifting, because let's say this is a great platform for consuming indulgences. So all the indulgences players need to start partnering with the quick commerce platforms like us in a big way. and their mind space and the work needs to shift accordingly as well. I think just sticking to their old methods of, let's say, working with the big e-commerce players or the modern trade players will probably not give them the kind of growth, or they can probably start seeing like the drop in demand as well. So appreciating where does quick commerce fit in really well with consumers and understanding the growth they can provide you, probably hence in investing an equal amount of work with the quick commerce players. I think that will give them the right growth, and that's how they should look at it.
I think, yeah, well, looking at the data, I mean, probably working closer, right? Because I think it's just one example that's coming on back of my mind, right? I think if you go to any modern store or something, I would not name the basically brand, but probably I was having a recent conversation with one of the brand. They were saying it was a chocolate brand. They were saying, I think the most of the SKUs, or basically the price segment in which the SKU sells in a modern trade, right? It's very, very different from what sells at Instamart, right? So I think these are the key insights for them, right? These are the key insights for basically opening up their SKUs, which probably don't sell in offline world or something, but they do sell quite high in quick commerce. So I think they need to take all these things into their planning and probably work accordingly and revise accordingly.
Thank you, Karan. The next question we have from Prabodh. He's from Delhi NCR, and he's asking, how can early stage D2C beverage brand sales via Instamart? And what's the best way to help and move forward?
Got it. I'll try and answer that. I think as a platform, we are quite open to having new D2C players, experiment with them, and wherever we see traction, we try to onboard them on a permanent basis as well. So I think that's the route all the D2C players should also take, not just with us, but with any quick commerce players, right? Like try partnering with the platform, see whether there's demand for the item or not. And if there does, I think it can be a great medium for them to have a higher sell-through through the quick commerce platforms as well, in addition to the likes of Amazon and Flipkart, where they might be playing right now. I think the important thing here is they should start building some recall on the traditional Amazons and the Flipkarts before they come to the quick commerce players, because discoverability would be higher in a player like Amazon and Flipkart, would be relatively lower in a quick commerce player. So once they've gained a certain scale, even I'm not looking for a big scale here, then probably like partnering with the quick commerce player platforms makes a lot more sense for them.
Thank you, Nikhil. The next question is from Love Vyas, and it's, what should be the average order value to make this business profitable?
Right. See, we can't comment on specifics. I think those are internal numbers, but I think like you said earlier, I think we believe the average order values in this business are sufficient to make it profitable while catering to the consumer use cases as well, be it as small or as big as they like.
Okay, so next question we have is from Mufiz, and he's asking, what kind of forecasting strategy can be used for perishable items to stay up with the demands and avoid wastage?
All right, I'll probably answer that. So see, I think one of the strategies, or probably one of the concepts, or one of the basically constructs, I would say, right, is basically in fresh is basically your recency, right? How recently, how recency of the data, right, or recency of the orders that you basically bake in your forecast is the key thing in your basically your perishables, right? And that's what we try to basically keep in mind. The other check that we basically keep in mind is whether this recency or whether there is a spike, and we try to cull out the noise from the data, right? So essentially, these are the two things that we keep in mind in perishables forecasting. Reason being, I think we need to keep both the wastage in mind, and as well as we have to ensure that this item is available on the store, because these are like the basket fillers, right? Essentially, these are the key items for which a consumer basically as a category comes on our platform. Right. So these are the two basic constructs that we basically keep in mind, right? Otherwise, if you talk about the models, then there are different regression models, then there are different data science models, which our data science team basically keeps on using. We also keep on experimenting with the third-party forecasting models that are available in the market as well. And so we basically kind of try to reduce basically we call it MAPE, or basically the forecasting errors. We have basically a week on week and a monthly targets to reduce on the forecasting errors. And we basically go ahead with the best model that's suited with it.
Thank you, Karan. So we do have a questions. So I'll merge two questions now. It's what are your views on medicine as a category for quick commerce, and would quick commerce for fashion take off in India? So here is talking about two categories, medicines and fashion.
I think Karan is best suited to answer this question, at least from the background he's coming from. He'll have a lot more context here.
No, I think, see, the point is, it's, again, there is sufficient demand for medicine as a quick commerce, right? I think most of the companies that are existing in the market, they basically cater to the chronic segment right now, right? Chronic is much more a planned purchase, right? I think because it's a monthly repeat purchase or something, and then basically the consumers are okay sometimes to wait for, let's say, 6 hours or something. No, but just again, this is just a perception, right? But once basically these companies start exploring this space, the acute segments opens up for them, for the companies who would try to basically get into the pharma delivery. And secondly, there would be certainly some consumers who would shift from their planned purchase to basically your instant purchase, even in the chronic segment. So I definitely see a scope there.
Okay. And do you see quick commerce and D2C merging at some stage?
Well, I'm still trying to understand the question. I think we, as Instamart, carry a lot of D2C brands already. So if that's the question, then that's already happening, right? D2C brands are like any other brand in some sense. We carry them. If consumers love it, we have it. It's quite simple as that, right? The other question you can have is, when you place an order from the D2C brand's website, I think when you check out, you get deliveries after, I don't know, X number of days, depending on the kind of partner they are working with. At that point in time, can we have a quick commerce checkout where the last mile is powered by the popular quick commerce players? That definitely, I think that's an important use case. We'll probably see that happening very soon.
Yeah, actually, the question was exactly the same, quick commerce and D2C. That was from Mr. Vishal Sharma, and thank you, Nikhil, for answering it. I'll take up the last question since we are almost reaching the time. How far do you think it is safe and fair for delivery partners to get it delivered within the stipulated time frame? Don't you think there should be an option for customers to opt out at the time of placing the order from this 10 to 15 minutes delivery, so that delivery partners knows he can deliver on his own pace?
Cool. I'll answer that to begin with. First of all, I think this question is pertaining to, let's say, 10-minute delivery or a 15-minute delivery. I like to officially call out we do 15 to 30-minute delivery, but I'll still talk about the problem that you referred to. I think even the quick commerce players globally, when they do 10 or 15-minute delivery, they do it in a way that the delivery partners do not have to cross a certain threshold of speed, which is the normal speed at which they travel during the day as well. And that's how they design the network. So there are two large parts of the 15 minutes, right? If I have to break down the whole 15-minute journey, one is picking the items and packing the items in the store. I think a lot of work goes into that to ensure that's done in 2 to 3 minutes. And that's how the whole store is also set up. And the remaining 11 to 12 minutes that we have are essentially for the last mile. I think the first thing companies do globally as well, they ensure their radius doesn't go beyond 2 to 3 kilometers, depending on whether they've chosen 10 minutes or 15 minutes, keeping in mind the normal speeds. And I'm focusing on the normal part here, the very normal average speeds that is prevalent in that particular city. And that's how they ensure that they don't create abnormal targets for the delivery partners. That's part one. And as Swiggy, I like to say, we don't incentivize our delivery partners on the basis of speed, essentially. So I think these are the two important things to bear in mind. From an outsider, I definitely understand the concern people have when they hear about 10 and 15-minute delivery, right? They'll have to travel at super speeds What they don't understand is there's a lot of work that has gone behind it in ensuring that we create networks or the store density or use technology in a way that we can make it possible without endangering the lives of our delivery partners. Well, we are very mindful about it, and I think so are the quick commerce players globally as well.
I think it's more of planning related, and we ensure that planning is right. We never tell to our delivery partners that this is the time that they have to deliver it within, right? So that's never communicated. And it's mentioned on our app as well. I mean, we do communicate that.
Right. So if you place an order from Swiggy and Instamart, after placing the order, there's a nice map that we show, which shows where your delivery partner is at right now. Just below that, there's a section specifically on this because we understand this occupies a big mind space in our consumers' heads. And it talks about, hey, how do we ensure delivery partner safety? And these are the 2-3 things that we talk about where like these things, the timelines are not communicated to them, their payout structure is not built accordingly. So that gives the peace of mind to our consumers as well, because we don't intend it to be this way.
And that's why you would see the timing that we give is very, very variable, right? In every order, right? It's more and more data and more learning, right? About, and we do keep safety of people in mind.
Thank you so much, Karan and Nikhil. I know I said that I'll be, asking the last question, but I saw some interesting questions coming in. And the question is from Sumant. How far is use of drone in deliveries?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question. How far
is the use of drone in deliveries?
Oh, use of drones in deliveries.
Yes.
I think it's an experimental stage right now. A few companies are experimenting with it to see the viability of it. I think what I read online was like the DGCA or the Aviation Ministry has given the license for a few players to try it out. But I think we are still some time away from that. I can't comment on the exact number of years it'll take or months it'll take, but quite far away from that.
But yeah, a little far away from that for now.
And how is the return being handled for D2C hyperlocal? Is somebody R. Sai, and he wanted to know the answer of it since he joined it late.
It'll be important to understand the question better. Return of D2C. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So how is the return being handled for D2C hyperlocal?
I'm still not clear about the question. I'll go with my interpretation of it. I'll probably try and explain what I understood and then give out the answer. I think the question is, if customers want to return something in a quick commerce business, what's the mode for that essentially? Is that the question?
Yes, and the proof of delivery part and the NDRs. So I'll read it out again. The question is, how is the returns being handled for D2C hyperlocal? The proof of delivery part and NDRs, the RTOs and the customer returns differentiations.
Okay. So I think regarding the customer returns, there are no customer returns as such. RTOs is being handled like a normal cancellation flow, right? If the consumer does not want the delivery, basically the same delivery executive returns the order back to the dark store. If it's basically out for delivery, if it is not out for delivery, it gets ragged at the dark store once it gets cancelled or once the consumer cancels it.
Okay, thank you so much, Karan. So finally, the last question. How would flavored and boutique tea bags do for quick commerce?
I think the real question to answer is, how would flavored tea bags do for consumers? If they'll do well for consumers, it'll do well for quick commerce as well.
So I think we have exceeded the time, and
yes.
I'm not surprised because this has been such an engaging and such a enlightening session. So thanks a lot, Sakshi, for serving those questions. Thanks a lot, audience, for engaging the panelists so well with all the questions. Regretfully, we'll have to bring this to an end. But before I do that, a couple of things. We will be, if you have more questions, please do feel free to send us a mail on marketing@vinfilmgroup.com. Rest assured, we will get those answers for you and we will share it with you. Those of you who were not able to listen to the complete track, we will be sending the full recording and also will be uploading it on our resources section of Vinfilm website. And last but not the least, thanks once again to Karan and Nikhil for joining us today and telling us so much about quick commerce. It's been a phenomenal and a most exciting webinar. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachna. I think the questions were great. It was amazing to probably share our experiences with people as well and the Winklim team. Thanks a lot for having us.
Yep.
Most welcome. Completely our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.